BPD remission. Out there in the echo chamber of a lot of misinformation and really irresponsible information, which I'm not saying all information out there is that, but tons of it is wrong, inaccurate, irresponsible, telling people what they want to hear. I don't know. Point is, BPD remission is a really tricky thing. And BPD remission isn't a well-defined thing. And BPD remission doesn't have one standard definition, nor is it really that clinical. Because the point is that people sort of frame BPD, quote, remission, unquote, as having, Grace, what are you up to? As having to do with the fact of trait reduction. Stop that, Grace, please. Having more to do with trait reduction than necessarily symptom reduction, or behavior and healthier behavior and relational ability to actually be oneself. And here's the problem with people with BPD. Now, they're not all the same, but they're not all the same, but for a higher percentage of people with BPD than not, if you think that they're just going to get into some kind of DBT or some kind of therapy and or quickly, like months to a couple of years or something, change and it's going to save your relationship, no. And why would that be? Well, because what is BPD remission? I mean, it comes from, in one place, it's based on studies that were not people in BPD remission. They were people with BPD that recovered, because the American Psychiatric Association still doesn't want to say recovered. So remission is not recovered, and there is such a thing as BPD recovery, but it takes a good, probably 10 to 15 or plus more years. And so the idea of BPD remission is just this reduction of BPD traits. So going from if they had 7 traits, now they say they have 4 traits. So if a person with BPD suddenly is told somehow, it's hard to measure, but is told or just believes now, I don't meet the criteria for BPD anymore. I'm under the 5 traits it takes to be diagnosed with BPD, which doesn't matter if you've been diagnosed with BPD. You know what I mean? And if they go down to 4 traits, what does that mean? For one person with BPD out there, it might mean that they are really improving. They're getting all kinds of therapy and not just DBT, and they're finding the container of self, and they're really growing and unlearning alloplastic defenses and, doing a ton of work to go from ego syntonic to ego dystonic. But that's not most people. And how do you know if that's the person that you're with that has BPD? Because you really can't know, can you? Because so many people are saying, that your person, like my person with BPD, my ex, my this, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, whatever the case, my brother, my sister, my mother, my father, whatever, you think that they're so better, and they're going to announce, they come back announcing all kinds of crazy things from therapy, like, I got misdiagnosed, I don't really have BPD. Meanwhile, you've been suffering with them in a marriage maybe for 10 plus years, and they have all these patterns. Well, here's the thing. Because there is some biology attached to something to do with the origin of BPD, I don't believe it's 100% biological or anything like that. But, I've seen 49% heritable, 49% genetics or biological, 55%, heritable genetics or biological. I mean, who knows? Point is, though, when we look at this biological aspect of reality that's there, that isn't all that some say it is, the point is with being born with an extra sensitive temperament, so there's something perhaps in the neurobiology there. Being born with that extra sensitive temperament is one thing that most people with BPD are born with. And then what happens? When they meet with an invalidating environment, like neglectful, troubled, not seen or heard, worse, really abusive background, family environment, or when they perceive that due to a higher sensitive temperament, then I still think this is how BPD develops. It kicks off between the basic biology, maybe neurobiology, to that with that that meets the invalidating environment. So trait count, why would that be important? Is it important? Well, we have borderline personality disorder, we have symptoms, we have behaviors, we have awareness deficits, loss of self, identity diffusion, no container of self in there. We have, with people with BPD, just they can't see other because they lack the self. So all of this stuff that's going on, neuroplasticity in psychodynamic therapy in particular really is part of the process of people with BPD healing and recovering. But in the meantime, to say BPD remission based on trait counts lowering, no, because those traits may not ever go away. Some, many, much of what those BPD traits mean can be resolved in long-term therapy of a psychodynamic modality like transference-focused psychotherapy over the course of years because of neuroplasticity, because of unlearning alloplastic defenses, because of unlearning the ego-satanic reality of BPD, which may be partly in the biology, partly not. But then people have to become ego-dystonic, and it takes a long time for people in therapy with BPD to be able to build. First, they got to find self, then the container of self. Then they have to grow that self in therapy. And it's like I'm just glossing over this to make it understandable real quick. But after all of that, which can take years by itself, if people can even get there, because not everybody with BPD is going to hang in for that. Not everybody with BPD is going to seek that treatment. Not everybody with BPD is going to have success in that treatment, unfortunately. So there's all that's needed and required, and then it's a building up and a strengthening of a healthy ego moving forward after lots and lots of work in therapy for people with BPD, so they can be ego dystonic. And that building up of ego doesn't make them egoic. It's about getting to a healthy level of relating, seeing self in other, understanding, and learning how to be mutual, reciprocal, and emotionally mature. This takes a long time for most people with BPD. So what's the problem with BPD remission is that people in remission aren't there. Or some people might be using that word instead of recovery, and shame on them for that, whether they're professional or not, whether they're talking about themselves or not. And the other thing about BPD remission and traits, symptoms and behaviors and actions that come from those, and all of the things that so many people that have been with a person with BPD, untreated, etc., and if you are now, and what you're going through, and how much hope you're pouring into they're going to get treatment any minute. It's going to change all this, right? It's going to be okay. No, codependent denial. What are you doing to yourself, number one? And what might you be doing to your kids? And if you're a man, yep, you're going to be in that nightmare called real hard to get 100% custody of your children. And are they better off with like her half the time, your borderline? Or, point is, if you try to stay together in a marriage for the kids, it's not going to help either. But to get back to this main topic here, and I'm talking really quick because, you got to be really short on here and nobody listens to anything beyond a certain point in time. And I don't know, is that ADHD in the whole population? I'm kidding. Anyway, trait reduction is something that may or may not ever happen for people with BPD. Isn't that shocking to hear? Maybe, maybe not. But the thing is, so we can't always say that a person who's progressing in BPD therapy treatment, so now they've learned more about ego dystonic things, even if they're not able to live that way yet. Now they know about a little bit more about self or lack of self, or trying to help people because borderline personality disorder has, like all personality disorders, to some degree or other, awareness deficits. So now it's about a person with BPD, yes, gaining more awareness, but unlearning all these maladaptive defenses like BPD splitting and push-pull and what to do with the approach avoidance conflict and all this other stuff. So are they really in treatment over the course of a lot of years? Are they really getting rid of traits? Or is it something else? Should it be described in a different context? That's what I'm thinking. Should be described in a different context. And when people say that they no longer meet the criteria for like the diagnosis, it doesn't matter if you've got the diagnosis. Because if you had 5 or 7 or 9 traits, well, you have BPD. Excuse me, and you're dealing with that. until you know who you are through lots of therapy. Oh, my throat's giving out. And people, I guess maybe I should just not continue to go in circles here. Sorry. The bottom line is, to even measure trait reduction isn't really the best way to know how some people with BPD are progressing. And so it's more like chain of analysis behavior in DBT. It's more like, I forget what it's called, but in cognitive behavioral therapy, there's another way to sort of record behavior and look at all these variables. So symptoms, behavior, thoughts, distortions come before feelings. So it's like quick thought, unconscious thought, boom, emotional dysregulation, kapow, now what, action taken impulsively, all this other stuff. Do you think that necessarily changes in somebody with borderline personality disorder because they or somebody in some contextual way that I can't figure out explains trait reduction? It's sort of not known. It's sort of not really understood. It sort of can be meaningless for a lot of people with BPD. What does it mean anyway? And I want you to think about that, because if your person with BPD comes back and announces, or like people all over the internet, I don't have BPD anymore because I'm down to 4 traits. Nothing could be further from the truth, because those 4 traits can be so impacting, and they won't necessarily be the 4 traits for everybody with BPD. And traits of BPD are still going to, they're still going to drive issues with perception, issues with cognition, issues with the thought that they're not aware of, boom, the emotional dysregulation. And then, well, can they control that with some DBT skills, or can they not? But it's symptom and behavior management. It's not from DBT only, this major change in who they are and how you can rock solid count on them to be at all. So BPD remission is a term thrown around that I think's become next to meaningless. It doesn't mean it's meaningless in everyone's life, but how do you know who's who? And I really abhor the fact that this YouTuber out there, you all know who I mean, right? Starts with a B, cannot find any consistency about BPD in his videos at all, because they don't just magically not have BPD, and they don't age out. They can't age out. And how can anybody with a brain, unless you're really hoping that your relationship can be saved and all of that codependent stuff, which unfortunately isn't doing you any good, to hang in there and believe that, because you're believing it not only with false hope, not only with denial, codependent denial, but you're believing that somehow this relationship's going to turn out to be better, or on the 8th or the 10th or the 15th recycle. Why? Well, it isn't going to be BPD trait reduction, I can tell you that right now. And that the road to healing of borderline personality disorder depends less on the definition and looking and somehow trying to measure, oh, well, this trait's gone now, that trait's gone now, this trait's gone now. It's not really the methodology that stands up to be able to define what is a person with BPD progressing through treatment getting better look like. How do they act? How do they feel? What does it all mean? So BPD remission, like I said in a short recently, but it just doesn't mean anything in particular. And again, I'll say it was based on studies, Zarini et al., which those people were not, quote, in remission. They were recovered, and they were fully treated people with BPD that were fully treated. And in one study followed for 20 years. And I think there's another study with another amount of years, and I think there's one around 10 years right now. But that's not people who were actually in, quote, BPD remission. They were treated successfully and fully, and then they were followed for years, and that held up that they actually have recovered. And so the misinformation out there is just, from my perspective, you can think what you want, but if you're somebody hanging in there with somebody with BPD and they have, and more often than not, what do I hear from clients, right? Whether the person with BPD went to therapy, had some therapy here, there, for the other reason, this reason, whatever. Maybe when they were way younger, maybe when they were a kid, maybe whatever, maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes, for a month ago. But this doesn't make for change. And so this idea that people with BPD are getting better because traits are sort of coming off the board or out of them or something, no longer applying, it's very problematic because there is some heritability and there is some biology to these traits. And that's a whole other long, I don't want to get into that right now. But bottom line is, I'm out here to work with anybody that resonates with me. If you really want to stop dreaming and being trapped in the codependent fantasy bond in these BPD relationships, if you really want to look at your codependency to heal, if you really want to look at reality, I'm out here to help you. And yeah, it's really painful. And the whole thing is a big tragedy in my opinion. So I'm not out here to browbeat people with BPD. But so many people are vilifying people with BPD, but they're staying with them. Like, what up with that? You got to think about, what are you doing? What are you going through? Instead of always focusing on that person with BPD. But remission by trait, count, falling, like, oh, this trait's gone, that trait's, it makes no sense, actually. It just makes no sense. So hope that might be somewhat helpful for somebody. It's not when anybody who's hoping for their borderline to come back or hoping for the borderline to make it work, or you were the favorite person. And by the way, if you're the favorite person, you should get therapy right away because it isn't a good place to be. Why are you there? Why did you get, besides the obvious, right? What is underneath your attraction to the borderline? And then there's that sunk cost fallacy. And I've talked about this all in videos. You've been with a person, marriages are breaking up all over the place. I mean, yes, in general. But like people with BPD, older, like they've been in marriage for 25 years, 15 years, even 7, 8, 9, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. They are crumbling because whatever makes those situationship relationships last that long, it's usually like it's not all hunky-dory. That's for darn sure. And the bottom line is, these people don't know who they are. And trait reduction to, quote, remission, unquote, or supposed trait reduction, that is stuck somewhat in the biology to neurobiology of BPD, and not 100%, right? But a certain percentage worth. That means that we can't just, I don't think I would ever assess a client of mine with BPD by, oh, well, now this trait's gone. This trait's like 30% better. I don't even know how you do that, and I don't think it makes any sense. So if you're reading about BPD remission, or they just age out, or any of that kind of stuff, just know you're on really shaky ground, and that most of it is meaningless, unfortunately. And you, how much longer can you keep trying to be the parent to your partner, and maybe have kids too? And they don't see you for who you are. But BPD remission, it really has no upstanding clinical, because they're saying remission when they mean recovery often, clinicians, because they don't want to use the recovery word. So be very careful out there, and don't think that if you get your borderline into treatment or you go to couples counseling, it ain't going to change squat. And I mean, I have 35 years experience in this. You don't have to take it from me. You can keep looking and searching and hurting yourself ad infinitum on top of what somebody with BPD might be doing that's really traumatizing you. So this idea that you can just take a trait away, take a trait away, take a trait away, and this means that they're this much better with this, that, the other thing, no. And those traits may never entirely go away. And what does that mean for BPD recovery? That's something I'm only going to discuss with clients. Out here to work with you. If you resonate with me, or you want to know more, or you want to pepper me with questions, I do lots of sessions with people that are nothing but endless questions, which is fine, about BPD in general, about where the science is at, about what was talked about all over the internet, as people are trying to assess where is their person with BPD and all of the cacophony of all of the misinformation and stuff that doesn't even make sense. Take care.